This video is going to be a little weird and a little different for me, but I thought I should sort of reciprocate some sentiment and hopefully pass it on a little bit. I have, just for some visual interest, a few books that are kind of related to this. I made the decision to pick some of these up, all of these up, based at least in part on some YouTube channels I'm about to mention. Recently, the YouTube channel Red Mage GM gave me a little bit of a shout out in a video, which I thought was wonderful, and I'm very thankful for. And it actually got me a boost on a whole bunch of subscribers, which is nice. I'm working my way up to 1,000, although I don't have, even with 1,000, I don't have anywhere near the viewership time to actually become a partner with YouTube. So, I still will have ads in my video that I'm not getting paid for. So yay. But I thought it would be fun to mention a few of the tabletop RPG YouTube channels that I particularly enjoy watching. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a list of some of the ones that I watch most frequently. A couple of these are less active these days than they had been in the past. One of them, and I'm going to try to keep primarily channels that are still active. One of them's been inactive for quite a while, but I think that person has an excuse. Anyhow, first I will mention Red Mage GM. Again, thank you. It was actually because of their video that I picked up Ford's Fairies, which I think is a really cool book. And actually, I have picked up several others from Drive-Thru RPG after seeing them highlighted on that channel. I also want to mention, not highlighted on here, but RPG Imaginings, which was one of the first, not necessarily the first, I think, Game Geeks, and then, is that right, Game Geeks? Yeah, Kurt Weigel, Game Geeks, and then Bud's RPG Reviews, and then Seth Skorkowski, I think, were the three channels that got me back. Oh, and then Matt Colville, which is weird because he's so D&D focused and I'm so not, but I enjoyed watching his videos, and they kind of got me back into thinking about gaming, thinking about RPGs, thinking seriously about them. I had always sort of kept them in the back of my mind. A good friend of mine is very into them, was very into them. He's since passed. And we stayed in communication and chatted about them all the time. But I wasn't really engaged in the hobby until then. And then after that, I ended up discovering RPG Imaginings. And probably not long after that, Orcus Dorcas RPG Shenanigans. Both of those channels are, I think, very good. Great for, as with Red Mage, sort of highlighting, focus is typically on some of the more, I guess what you'd call maybe OSR, but not necessarily just that. Whereas Orcus Dorcas Shenanigans and RPG Shenanigans, and the completely unprofessional unboxings, which I unfortunately cannot just steal, even though I feel that mine are even more unprofessional. And RPG Imaginings, they both look into games, a little bit more variety of games that are more my thing, because I tend not to be so much into fantasy or traditional fantasy and that sort of thing. But I like the sort of variety. And like with Seth Skorkowski doing a lot of Call of Cthulhu, which was great. And that was, I think, why I ended up watching RPG Imaginings, because they were doing Cthulhu-related stuff. Anyhow, on to the next one. DM Tales is one that I really enjoy. Wes does a lot of really interesting looks at, again, a wide variety of games, sometimes games that are not necessarily getting picked up and talked about by a lot of people. That's actually where I have here Sentinel Comics down here on the bottom. I picked that up thanks to DM Tales, and I really enjoy his reviews, and I like them a lot. Very positive. Also enjoy that he gets into the physical properties of the books in a much more fiddly way than I'm used to thinking about books, really getting into stuff like, font and all of that. So anyhow, then I also really enjoy Jeff at the Gaming Gang. I enjoy watching the live videos, although I rarely catch them live any longer. Watching the news and then whatever he's covering after the news is usually something interesting. And there's often a lively discussion in the live chat, which, again, unfortunately, I don't get to engage in as much anymore. I really enjoy the gaming table for very short reviews, often of very independent, interesting, and strange games that I've never heard of. Now, sometimes they are ones I've heard of, sometimes they're ones I've played, but they really are all over the place. You never know what she's going to have next, and I think that's really cool. Yeah, I think that's very cool. And the videos are very short. I think her whole plan is to have them under 10 minutes, and I think they're usually like 7 or 8 minutes. But anyway, then XP Lovecat. Now, XP Lovecat has done more than just Call of Cthulhu, but I came to her channel through Call of Cthulhu and really find those reviews very helpful. And I've definitely picked up a couple of Call of Cthulhu adventures based on those reviews. Somebody who probably doesn't really need a lot of intro. I feel like a few of these have quite a large subscriber base already, but I still wanted to bring them up. And one I think he's sort of famous because he came out of the Shut Up and Sit Down, but it's Quinn's Quest. I enjoy the whole vibe. I enjoy the weird show that is Quinn's Quest. And there are not a lot of episodes. I feel like, I think he's doing them in seasons, and I feel like the season is not that long, but that's also in part because every game that he talks about, he has like fully run the game. And I mean, I am not somebody who believes that you have to run an RPG before you can talk about it and you can tell people how good it is one way or another. But there is a difference once you've actually run it. And I look at it, I do reviews, I read RPG books, I have a long history of running games, so I understand how things are going to work and all that sort of thing. But there is a difference once you've actually run it. And I don't try to put anybody under any illusions as to whether or not I have or haven't. I will talk about it if I have. For example, I had a different opinion of the Pulp Cthulhu campaign, A Cold Fire Within, after I ran it. I stand by my original review. That was how I felt when I read through the book and some of my thoughts of it at the time. But running it at the table did give me a different perspective. So I understand why some people only want to read stuff or hear stuff or whatever from people who've run them. But I also don't think, how many reviews would you actually be able to track down if you did that? Because how many of us get to run all of these things? You're getting the best we can at the time. Anyway, Quinn's Quest, he does run through those different games that he talks about, and he talks about some really interesting stuff. I also really enjoy it's written. The name of the channel is Capped Courageous, and it's Courageous, Corajus. RPG retro reviews. It's Captain Courageous. He tends to focus on D&D, although not exclusively, but a lot of like older D&D stuff. I have definitely watched his reviews for older D&D modules to decide whether or not I would get POD versions of them to use for whatever, Dungeon Crawl Classics, whatever. But I think that they're really well done. Yeah, he does a really good job and a really thorough job on it. Lace and Steel, Polly Kidd, always really interesting games, very enthusiastic, an industry veteran and a very enthusiastic hobby ambassador, we'll put it that way. And, always interesting videos, always interesting history videos too, but especially I like a lot of the game reviews. let's see, One Shot Adventures. One Shot Adventures, and that's a number one shot adventures. I tend to like when he does a lot of like very practical advice for running Dungeon Crawl Classics modules, which I found handy. And so I've really enjoyed some of those. And then one that hasn't put out a video in quite a while, but I still wanted to bring it up. And it's because I believe he's a teacher in Japan. And, I understand sometimes things get backlogged and the videos have, I also think, relatively new father, I believe. But it's RPGs with Patty. So RPGs with Patty hasn't put out a video at time I'm recording this in 11 months, but I suspect probably there will be some coming soon because that channel definitely is into Cthulhu by Gaslight. So with that, the new edition coming out and new stuff coming out for it, I'm sure that will hopefully eventually be coming. I never know what's going on in people's lives, so I can't say one way or another, but I suspect there will be more coming. So those were just some of the channels I wanted to talk about. And I hope that some of these might be of interest to you. Let's see if I was clear on what everybody kind of does. I mean, yeah, Orcus Dorcas Shenanigans, RPG Shenanigans kind of covers a lot of different things. RPG Imaginings covers a lot of different things. Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest Traveler, Quinn's Quest is all over the place. Captain Courage tends to be this gaming tables, all sorts of, a lot of indie stuff, not entirely, but a lot of indie stuff. XP Lovecat, a lot of Cthulhu, some Cult recently, which is just a game I'm not super interested in for various, I never have been. Like when it first came out in English back in the 90s, it just didn't click with me. Gaming Gang for news and a lot of reviews as well, which I've definitely used Gaming Gang reviews to make decisions. Red Mage for a lot of like OSR adjacent stuff, but not necessarily purely OSR. There's none of that kind of like, whatever that you kind of get sometimes with OSR people where there's like a us and them thing. You don't get that from Red Mage. And let's see, yeah, One Shot Adventures, especially for the DCC content. Yeah, I think I covered what's on there. So anyway, those are some channels I think, if you enjoy my channel at all for whatever reason, you might enjoy. Now, chances are you've probably seen a lot of them. I think everybody on here has a much higher subscription thing than me, so I'm sure their videos are getting out there. But also everybody on here puts a heck of a lot more work into their stuff, like editing and scripting and good sound, not shooting on their cell phone, that kind of thing. So check those out. I may do a couple more videos like this at some point talking about other things. I mean, these are just some of the maybe smaller RPG review channels that I like. But, I also watch some people who focus on solo RPGs. I watch people who do more like story crafting and RPG advice type stuff. And then, of course, outside of the RPG stuff, there are history channels that I really enjoy that I think I might talk about at some point, and some travel and that sort of thing. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do some other videos of some of my favorite YouTube channels, especially some of my favorite, maybe lesser known YouTube channels. So yes, until next time, take care.